Hey guys, how's it going? Today we'll be looking at my laptop and UMPC/netbook collection. So I've already done a video highlighting basically all my smaller retro devices. So I've gone over all my phones, PMPs, PDAs, tablets, messengers, those type of devices already. So now we'll be looking at the rest of my devices, all the bigger devices. So if you guys haven't checked out the other video, I'm just going to post a link up here. But otherwise, if you're interested in this video, please continue on. So yeah, today we'll be looking at my bigger devices basically. Now it's kind of arbitrary because some of these devices are pretty small actually, but I'm gonna classify it as by saying that most of these devices run desktop class operating systems or are meant to be kind of full-blown computers in a sense, right? So we're just gonna go by each one, and again, I have them laid out on my bed because there just isn't enough space on a table to show you guys all of these. And some questions you guys may have, for some of my older subscribers, you guys may have seen my older UMPC collection video. So some devices are missing in this one that I had before. So most prominently, so I don't have the Asus R2H anymore. I don't have any of the Villiv UMPCs anymore. I don't have the HTC Shift X9500, and I don't have the Razer Edge Pro. So those ones I either got rid of because I thought that they were a little bit redundant, or I just didn't have enough space for them, and I just thought that they were better replacement computers essentially. So anyways, that's why some of those other UMPCs that you may have seen in my other videos are not here. But we got some new ones in this collection as well from my recent videos. So let's go and take a look. And again, the way I laid them out, the way I arranged them is based on year. So the bottom row is basically the earliest. So I'm going to start with the Scion. This is from 1999 all the way up to 2007, and that's the first row. And the second row is from 2007, all the devices released from 2007 to 2010. And third row from 2010 all the way to 2016. The fourth row, all the devices from 2017 to 2019. And then finally the last row, all the devices from 2019 to this year, 2020. So yeah, let's just take a look. We're going to start with the earliest device first. So starting from the bottom row, from the left. All right, so first device I have up here is the Scion 5MX, and I'm just going to go and try to open up all these devices as I go along. Try and do it with one hand. So yeah, this is the Scion 5MX, and it can be considered kind of like a palm top PC. So back then there was this category called handheld PCs or palm tops. So yeah, this one was meant to compete with Palm Pilots, Pocket PCs, other handheld PCs. And what's unique about the Scion is it actually runs on like standard batteries, like I think AA batteries. So it isn't running off of like rechargeable batteries like other mobile devices are. So you can actually just power these from batteries that you buy at the store, which is pretty cool. And the keyboard is really nice and praised. This is a very classic keyboard. Obviously, no, it's not the best keyboard in the world or anything, but when talking about mobile devices, especially from this time period, I think Scion really nailed it with this keyboard. And that's why to this day, there's still a lot of enthusiasts that still have Scion devices because they really like this keyboard, and there's been companies like Planet Computers which have resurrected this keyboard for modern use. So that's how you know how much this keyboard is beloved. And yeah, it's basically your typical palm top device, so it has all these pin functions: Word, Sheet, Contacts, Agenda, Email, Calculator, Notepad, extras, basically for the business folks of the time, right? So that they can plot down their agenda or type down some spreadsheets or type a document or something like that, especially with this relatively nice keyboard of the time. It even had a backlight, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, this is a Scion 5MX from 1999, and I believe this was the last model produced by Scion. Actually, no, that's not true. Scion actually made, they actually made a PC called the Netbook, which I actually did a video on before. So that's another PC I forgot to mention that you won't see in this video. You won't see the NEC Mobile Pro or the Scion Netbook because those are handheld PCs that I got rid of a few years ago, right? To make space for other things I forget. But yeah, those ones you won't see in this video either. But yeah, it's not Scion's last computer, but this is definitely, I think, the last of this line of computers, these small palm tops, I believe. So anyways, very, very small, very, very light, portable, runs on AA batteries, so that's all pretty nice. So that's a Scion 5MX from 1999. Next up, we have another handheld PC. This is the HP Jornada, which runs Windows CE. You can see this Windows powered right here. So it runs Windows CE. I think they had a handheld PC edition, so I think it's running that. So this is the HP Jornada 720 from 2002-ish, I think. I might not be exactly right on all these dates, but I think it's from around that time. And again, resistive touchscreen, just like the Scion, so you need to use a stylus. But that's, you know, true of most computers of that time, like handheld PCs and Palm Pilots and stuff like that. The keyboard isn't quite as nice as the one on the Scion, but it's okay. Still better than a lot of the membrane keyboards that you see nowadays, right? For small devices. So you got buttons for Internet Explorer, Mail, which is Outlook probably, to-do list, calendar, agenda, Microsoft Access for databases, spreadsheets, and Word. So you got some nice dedicated keys here, and pretty decent keyboard for a laptop, a handheld PC of this size. So yeah, that's the HP Jornada 720, which is a handheld PC. This is a category that eventually evolved into pocket PCs and PDAs, and eventually, you know, into smartphones. So that's nice from around the early 2000s. All right, next up we have the first laptop. I would consider, like, these ones were just small handheld computers slash PDAs. This one is actually a laptop. So this is the Dell Latitude D600 from around 2003, I believe. Oops, this actually has a latch. So doing the latch. Here we go. And the return of the 7-row keyboard. How long has it been since you guys have seen that? Pretty nice keyboard, right? Nice keyboard, 7 rows, right? You got all the buttons right here. Computers from back then, very heavy and very thick, but trade-off is you get better key travel, right, out of those. So pretty nice keypad, and right, you got the track point nub, which Dell doesn't have anymore, but they used to have ThinkPad style nub right here. And you got dedicated buttons up here for volume, mute, power on, indicator lights, display latch, things that you don't really see anymore. A 4x3 display, you don't see that anymore. It's a very, very small trackpad, just pretty common for the time. And yeah, I actually have this computer just for running Windows 98. So there are some retro applications, like old applications that I want to run sometimes, and if one of them require like native Windows 9X support, then I'll probably use this PC for it, because this is running Windows 98, and I don't have any other laptop that's running a Windows 9X. So, and you might be saying, why not use DOSBox? Well, it's not the exact same thing. Like this one actually, if I need a program that actually requires like Windows 95 or 98, then I'll probably use this computer to run it. And it does have like a parallel port and a serial port and VGA, all that stuff on the back. So a lot of the legacy connections I can use for this computer. I believe it also has a DVD drive as well. So this one does have all the connections that I need for if I want to hook up some old hardware or run some old software. This is the computer I usually use. So the Dell Latitude D600 from, again, the early 2000s. All right, now we jump to 2006 and we come to our first, the first official UMPC device, I would say. The Sony VUX, which is a very famous UMPC. This was the first wave of UMPCs, was around 2006, 2007. And this is one of the most well-received ones because it was probably one of the most powerful UMPCs of the time. You got to remember that this project, the UMPC project, which was kind of spearheaded by Microsoft actually at the time, they actually, most of them ran on very anemic hardware. So we're talking about like Pentium M's. This is before Intel Atom, so like the Intel A110, VIA processors. So those are all very, very slow. This one, the Sony VUX, actually ran a Core Solo processor, which was faster than most of the other processors on UMPCs at the time. So this was actually one of the more faster UMPCs this was actually faster than most of the other UMPCs of the time. And this is a pretty unique one still, because it has this slide up, right, kind of form factor, and it's still pretty cool to look at, this interesting form factor, and actually came with mobile broadband at the time. That's what the antenna was for. Had a camera on the back, a removable battery. This was of course a resistive touchscreen. Fingerprint sensor, way before fingerprint sensors were common. I got the limited edition, James Bond edition, right? So there's only 500 ever made, and yeah, it's still a pretty unique PC, just because of the form factor and everything. And I don't like the keyboard. Like I said, this keyboard is probably not one of the best. Very, very flat keys. So that's one thing I don't like about the Sony VIO UX. But in other ways, like the form factor and the power, I think this was pretty nice for the time. It's just I don't like this this keyboard. And of course, comes with this proprietary dongle slot, and comes with one USB port, which is pretty common for these type of PCs back then. But yeah, still pretty interesting form factor. And the Sony VIO UX is still beloved by a small group these days. It's a very niche following, but kind of like a cult following, just because of the unique form factor and the fact that it was the most powerful of the first generation of UMPCs, or one of the most powerful. So that's it, Sony VIO UX, a classic from the first generation. Then moving on, we have the Okio Model 2, which is also kind of similar to the VIO UX in the form factor, because it's also a slide up, except the keyboard here I would consider to be a little bit superior to the one on the VIOs, because the keys are actually raised, whereas the keys are very, very flat on the VIO UX. And that's the one thing I didn't like about the UX, is the keys are too flat. The keys are raised here, so it makes it easier to press. Also, you get a numpad, and left and click are right here. So the usage is a little bit different. I mean, you do have the mouse buttons right here, and the mouse cursor right here. Here you have the mouse cursor right here, mouse buttons right here. Also have a resistive touchscreen, and you have an HDMI, which is very forward-thinking of Okio at the time, because at the time not many devices, laptops or UMPCs, neither of them really had a full HDMI. The common way to connect was via VGA or DVI connector at the time. So HDMI, very forward-thinking, dongle slot, one USB port, just like the VIO. But otherwise, this one, I actually like the form factor of this one as well. It's almost in some ways better than the VIO UX. The problem with the Okio, the major problem, is the performance, right? So this one ran a very slow VSC7M processor and only 1 gig of RAM. And actually the Sony VIO UX had 1 gig of RAM too, so I can't really fault it on that. But it's the main problem is the processor, right? The VIO processor is too slow. If this had an Intel Core Solo processor like the UX did, I think this would have actually been the better one, right? Because right now, if someone's asking me, hey, I want a first generation UMPC device, I'm going to recommend the Sony VIO UX, just because they can actually do stuff on it with Windows XP. Whereas the Okio Model 2, this actually shipped with Vista at one point, and Vista is just way too much for this device to handle. But if you run Windows XP, even running Windows XP, it really was kind of sluggish. Just the processor was just too slow, right? So Okio made a wrong choice for the processor. They really should have chose the Intel Core processor. So that's the major reason I would recommend the UX over the Okio Model 2 for the first generation UMPC device. Similar form factor. I like the keyboard on the Okio better, but it's just too damn slow, right? You can't do anything on it. So VIO UX, at least you can do some things on it, right? Because it actually has some decent processing speed for Windows XP. This one, even running Windows XP, it's sluggish. So anyways, cool form factor though. And by a cool company that unfortunately went out of business, didn't get to release the next model. All right, next up, this is also from 2007. This is also from 2006, 2007, is the Samsung Q1. They actually came out with several revisions of this. It's kind of like a tablet, right? So I can actually prop it up because that does have a kickstand. So it's kind of like a tablet. Difference is it has a split keyboard here. So it has a split QWERTY keyboard, kind of unique. The only other UMPC I've seen that had this was the PepperPad 3, which unfortunately I couldn't get working. So this is pretty unique, having the split keyboard here, and the mouse cursor is right here on the left side, and the mouse click is on the right side here. That's kind of opposite of what we saw on the Okio and the VIO UX. Fingerprint sensor right here as well. This is actually the Ultra edition, I think. So the first edition actually didn't even have a split keyboard. The first Samsung Q1 was just like a tablet thing. And then the second edition, which I think was called the Ultra, the Q1 Ultra, had the split keyboard. So that's what this version is. So I initially had the Q1 Ultra Premium, which is the top end model of this UMPC, and it actually had a Core Solo processor. And unlike the other UMPCs of the time, this one was expandable all the way up to 2 gigs of RAM, which made it possibly the most powerful UMPC. I know I said the Sony VIO UX, but this one possibly even more powerful because of 2 gigs of RAM, and if you get the top version with the Core Solo processor, then it becomes the most powerful stock UMPC of the first generation. You could actually mod the VIO UX into a Core 2 Solo. I think some people did that, but that's unofficial, right? Officially, if you get the top end model of this one, the Q1 Ultra Premium, it is probably the most powerful UMPC of the first generation back in 2007. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, 7-inch screen, and had pretty good specs for UMPCs at the time. So like I said, 2 gigs of RAM that was expandable was definitely better than other UMPCs of the time. Fortunately, the touchscreen is also resistive, just like every other touchscreen of the time. Because this was, you know, around the time that the first iPhone came out, so capacitive touchscreens weren't really that popular back then. But also a very unique way of inputting, just having a split keyboard right here. So yeah, I've done a video on all these devices, and if you want to know more about any of these devices, go check out those videos. But yeah, Samsung Q1 Ultra from 2007. Then moving on, another device from 2007. This is a very rare device. I got pretty lucky finding this on eBay, but usually you don't see them, is the Vulcan Flipstart. So this one, the Vulcan is a company that actually was backed by Paul Allen of Microsoft, and they only made this one device, and it is a pretty unique UMPC. First of all, you can see that layout, very reminiscent of a lot of the GPD UMPCs that came out, but back then this was pretty much the only device that had this kind of layout, which is pretty interesting. It had both a trackpad right here, mini trackpad, and it had like a mouse cursor right here. So that was interesting. D-pad, left and right click. So the fact that the layout was like this kind of made this device the best one for playing old school games back at the time, because you know, this one had the layout probably the best suited for that, for playing games. And before the newer UMPCs came out, that was kind of revived by GPD and one Netbook. Before all those UMPCs came out, this was probably the one I would recommend if you wanted to have a UMPC for playing old school games. Fortunately, this UMPC was very hard to get, right? This is a very rare UMPC, the Vulcan Flipstart. I got lucky with this one, but it's not common to find this device at all. Most people don't know about it. But yeah, it came out around the same time, 2007. In terms of power, it is more powerful than the Okio because it runs a Pentium M, but not quite as powerful as the top end Sony VIO UX or Samsung, because it, you know, those run a Core Solo, which are basically an upgraded version of the Pentium M. But it's kind of in the middle in terms of power. Only had 512 megs of RAM, and it's not expandable, so that's what I would say was the downfall of the performance here. You can't even upgrade to 1 gig of RAM, just a hard 512 megabytes, which is too small, so that's the main problem. But you can run like DOS games and stuff like that on it, and I kind of used this to play DOS games for a time. So yeah, the Vulcan Flipstart, very, very cool computer from back then. It's from 2007, a very unique layout. You can see you have even dedicated media buttons here, a dedicated desktop button, and even a dedicated Control Alt Delete button. So definitely a pretty unique UMPC of the time. So yeah, the Vulcan Flipstart, it comes with one USB port and one expansion slot, of course, and you got the side, like a scrollers on the side for web pages and stuff, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's a Vulcan Flipstart. Alright, so moving on to the second row, still 2007, we have the Lenovo ThinkPad X61, and this one has a latch as well, I believe. So there you go. Alright, so this is a 12-inch computer, and the reason I have this one is because this is a pretty famous ThinkPad just because it is the last ThinkPad to have the 4:3 aspect ratio display. All of the ThinkPads after this one have a 16:9 aspect ratio. So this is the last one. It's a 4:3 released in 2007, and some ThinkPad owners still religiously devote themselves to old models. So to the point where you can find like modifications and upgrades for this model. Like you can find it online, adding like a LED backlit and other like a CPU upgrade or something like that. So you can still find upgrades for this model just because so many people, there's a dedicated fan base, right, for ThinkPad enthusiasts, and they love some of these old models so much that they have upgrade kits for them. So the X61 is a pretty beloved model. The X240 is another one. But this one, yeah, the last ThinkPad with a 4:3 aspect ratio display, which is pretty important for dedicated ThinkCards, right? So it has a ThinkLight, which is something you don't see in modern ThinkPads anymore. ThinkLight up there, like I said, 4:3 aspect ratio, status indicator lights, and a 7-row keyboard. This is all retro ThinkPad stuff. ThinkVantage, dedicated buttons for the volume, and the keyboard, of course. ThinkPads are renowned for their amazing keyboard, and this one's no exception. Really, it's beautiful, responsive, tactile keyboard to use. And today's ThinkPads still have really good keyboards. It's just this 7-row keyboard with a deeper key travel, I think is in some ways a lot of people would agree that's superior still, right? No trackpad down here, by the way. You can only use the track point as God intended. So yes, still a beloved ThinkPad model. Anyways, I have this one just for the collectability, the ThinkPad collectability, right? Because I know that there is a lot of enthusiasts out there who collect ThinkPad models. I think this is definitely one of the collectible ones, the X61. And yeah, it's from 2007, runs Windows XP still. So if I want to do Windows XP stuff, I would still use this one as well. All right, moving on, we have another netbook type of device. This is the Fujitsu U820, and it's a pretty small one. Fujitsu made a lot of cool UMPCs back in the day. This is just one of them, and this one is a convertible as well. It's an old school convertible design. Now all the convertibles use a 360-degree yoga hinge. This uses the old school convertible design, which is a swivel design and can lay down flat, right? So yeah, this one is a slightly upgraded version of the U810. The difference is that this runs an Intel Atom and the U810 runs an Intel A110. Not too much difference. They're both slow, but this one's maybe like 5% faster, I don't know. Anyways, it's the upgraded model, and this one's from around 2009, 2010-ish, I think. The keyboard is not that great. I mean, but it is what it is. It's a very small computer. I think this is only like 5 inches. So yeah, and this is a touchscreen fingerprint sensor right here. Because, you know, most of these UMPCs back then were actually meant for business users, because business users were the only ones that can afford these. So yeah, a lot of buttons here for the display scaling, and then you got the left to right mouse clickers right here, because I think this was meant to be used with your thumbs. So these are meant for thumb typing, and the mouse cursor right here, and there's a few other buttons right here. But yeah, this is the Fujitsu U820 from around 2009, I believe. You know, I kind of miss these old school convertible designs, because back then, if you wanted to show a friend or something in a presentation, you just like swivel around and then swivel back, right? Now you can't do that anymore, since we have the 360-degree hinge. It doesn't really have the versatility. I understand why they switched, because the 360 design doesn't have the weakness of the middle point like the swivel design does. But still, I think someone should bring back the swivel design. I think one netbook is maybe making a computer like that. It's called the A1 or something like that. It's supposed to be like an industrial UMPC meant to compete with the micro PC from GPD, but I believe they're bringing back the swivel convertible design, which is really nice, right? I would love to see this convertible design come back. So cool. That's the Fujitsu U820. Next up, we have the Sharp Netwalker, I think also from 2009. This is a really, really small, tiny one. And this one uses the optical track point nub. This is kind of the same one that one netbook uses today in their OneMix devices, which I personally don't like. I prefer having either having a trackpad or having a track point like a ThinkPad style nub. The optical one just isn't as great. But yeah, this is by Sharp, which you don't see really make that many computers, but they did make this one. And again, used for thumb typing mostly. This computer is just too small to be used on a desk, but mostly meant for thumb typing. These are all buttons, actually. They're just capacitive buttons, and left and right click mouse buttons right there. Super tiny display. What makes this one stand out? It's a pretty rare model. It's only released in Japan, so I had to get this shipped from Japan, and generally pretty rare to see here in North America. And it runs Linux, so it does not run Windows. All these other ones, yeah, Windows. Next one's gonna be Windows as well, but this one ran Linux, which is pretty cool and unique. I forget what distribution it ran, but I do remember it ran some version of Linux, so that's pretty cool from UMPC from 2009. All right, next up we have the Sony VOP. So back in the day, Sony tried to get into the netbook game, and they made possibly the most stylish netbook ever. Because, you know, this was at a time when all the netbooks basically looked really boring. Like the Asus EEPC started the trend, which were pretty decent looking, but then all the others jumped in, the Dells and HPs, and they really made it look boring. And here comes Sony. They make a pretty stylish looking one. I mean, it's just, yeah, they marketed this as a luxury netbook. So it's like one you can fit into your handbag. Anyways, the glossy lid, right, with VIO on it, that's classic. Anyways, this is possibly the most stylish netbook. And of course, Sony made it. So what I like about this netbook, very unusual resolution. This is unusually high resolution at the time. It's like 1600 by 900 or something like that. So pretty unusual at a time when netbooks all had really small resolutions. And it's an 8-inch display, which is quite a bit bigger than a lot of the netbooks at the time. So very unusual resolution of the time. It was actually so high res that people basically complained about it. And Sony actually made, I think, some special utilities to make the display actually scale more smoothly, because it was so high resolution for the time. And the keyboard, pretty nice keyboard. The keys are pretty widely spaced. So this is actually Sony's signature chiclet keyboard, which, by the way, if you guys don't know, Sony was the original computer maker that started the chiclet trend, right? This is before Apple, before anyone else did it. Sony was the first one to come out with the chiclet style keyboard. Now every computer has it, but Sony came out with it, so this is their original design. Chiclet style keys that are so familiar today, but back then you got to remember, these were the keyboards back then, non-chiclet style, right? Now every keyboard looks like this. But yeah, the track point nub right here, that's how you used it. So no trackpad, no space for one. Left and right click, of course. If you're used to a ThinkPad, I think you'll like this style. And of course, the problem with this one, just like every other netbook, ran a stupid Intel Atom processor, which at the time, now Intel Atoms have gotten a little bit better. Cherry Trails, Bay Trail processors. Intel Atoms are still crap, but they've gotten better since, this is what, 2009, right? 2009, if you had an N450 or a ZZ, what is it, Z850 or something like that, 870, you're in a lot of trouble, because those Intel processors were extremely slow, right? This one's no exception. I believe it ran a 1.6 gigahertz Z850 or something like that. So yeah, basically it was crap. And that was not Sony's problem. That was just the fault of most netbooks at the time, right? The processors were just too slow, and this ran Windows Vista, which means if you're going to run Windows Vista on 1 gig of RAM, even 2 gigs of RAM, with Intel Atom processor, you're going to be in trouble. Like, it's going to be like slow as molasses, right? So I really like the design of this netbook. I think it's really cool. Sony made a kind of stylish one, and easy to hold in your hand, very light and portable. But unfortunately, because it's a netbook, it had really crap internals and hardware, so just too slow to use. And up next we have the Fujitsu U820 from 2010. This one, I had to put this cloth here because what the problem with this one was, over time, because it's such an old computer now, this is over 10 years old now, some of the sticky residue starts forming. I believe it's coming from the display, but I think it's, yeah, some sticky residue is like forming from the display, and I put this here to try to, just so that it wouldn't get all over the keyboard, right? So that's why this cloth is here. But yeah, the UH900 is a pretty interesting one. This one actually did not come out in the US, so this one is imported from Japan. Just like a lot of Fujitsu PCs are not popular in the US, they're mostly from Japan. But this one basically has the same specs as the VOP, so same amount of RAM, about 2 gigs of RAM, same as the VO, and running Intel Atom processor, and SSD, which I upgraded myself. So this one has a removable battery, but underneath the battery you upgrade the SSD, which was using a, I believe it was a PATA SSD using a ZIF connector. So I upgraded the SSD to 128 gigs. So this is possibly one of the only UMPCs that have 128 gigs of SSD storage, right? Because I upgraded it, but you don't see many netbooks from that time have 128 gigs SSD storage, right? As for the keyboard, yeah, it's not very good. This is a smaller computer than the VOP, so understandable why the keyboard is more cramped. It is like 5.6 inch display. This is a multi-touch display, by the way. And by multi-touch, I mean a very primitive version of multi-touch. We're talking 2010 multi-touch here. So not like today's multi-touch. But it had multi-touch. And the cursor is up here and left and right click here. So it's meant to be used mostly as a thumb typing machine. Whereas the Sony, you can actually use it on a desk because it's actually wide enough to be used on a desk. This one too small, so you got to use your thumbs. But yeah, just like with other netbooks of the time, like I said, too slow to be actually usable. Does have a cool form factor. Don't like the fact that the display basically residues. It starts forming, and yeah, not good for maintainability. But other than that, pretty interesting one. It does feel a little bit cheap compared to the Sony though. So in general, I prefer the Sony design more compared to the Fujitsu. But the Fujitsu is kind of cool in its own ways, and you know, I upgraded it and stuff, so still have it as part of my collection. Alright, and up next we moving on to 2010 now. So this was, actually I believe this was released in 2010. So around the same time, 2009, 2010, and also in 2010 we have the Toshiba Libretto. This is called W700, I believe. This is a pretty unique computer. So what's unique about it is, you see that? There is no physical keyboard here. It is actually a dual touchscreen netbook. So that's pretty unique, right? Now we see something like the Microsoft Surface Duo or the Surface Neo that's coming up, and we think, wow, what an original design, right? And that's in 2020. But back in 2010, 10 years ago, Toshiba actually had this design. They had a multi-touch display on top and a multi-touch display on bottom. You can drag one display from the top to the bottom, and you actually could switch the keyboard between different keyboard modes. This was to go home, and this was all implemented in Windows 7. So they managed to have this multi-touch interface with dual screens. You could have a touchscreen keyboard that you can virtually change using this button. There's like a split keyboard mode, numpad mode, a bunch of different modes. You can cycle through them, and they implemented this in Windows 7 all the way back in 2010. So that's pretty cool, and it's running with Intel Pentium dual-core processor, I believe. So it's not fast or anything, but it's better than Intel Atom. I'm going to say that. It's better. Anything's better than Intel Atom, but still pretty slow for the time. But it's kind of like a netbook. Very interesting netbook though, because of the dual touchscreen implementation. This is way before Microsoft even had any inkling of the Surface Neo. And before Lenovo's Yoga Book as well. So this is like, as far as I know, this is one of the first dual touchscreen PCs, along with the Acer Iconia 6120, I believe, which came out around the same time. These computers were pretty much the first to have the dual touchscreen displays, and so that's why I have it in my collection. This is an extremely rare model, and I think still the last Libretto model. I don't think Toshiba has ever made another Libretto, but yes, very, very cool, unique computer. All right, so moving on, we're still in 2010. So next up we have possibly the rarest out of all my computer models, and this is the Okio DX. And you may be wondering, Onkyo makes computers? I thought they were an AV audio video, equipment manufacturer that makes receivers and stuff. Well, that's why this is extremely rare, right? I bet you've never seen an Onkyo PC before. Not only that, this is an extremely interesting PC. So it's a netbook. It's a 10-inch netbook. I forgot to mention the libretto is 7 inches, by the way. This one is 10 inches. So there's nothing remarkable about the specs at all. It runs Windows 7, 1 gig of RAM, 160 gig rotating hard drive, and it runs an AMD Athlon Neo processor, which is pretty much equivalent to Intel Pentium processor. So nothing really remarkable about the specs. And the design looks pretty basic, right? Looks like any other netbook of 2010. But here's where it makes it special. You can actually pull out this display, and here we go. I'm trying to do it using one hand. Come on. Here we go. There we go. So it actually expands into 2 screens. Isn't that cool? And we really have not seen that since. It's kind of weird that Onkyo, a company that's not really known for making PCs, came out with a pretty original design. And I think there's another one, the Kojinsha, whatever, that's also not a well-known brand. But I also wonder why companies don't try to do something like this again, right? I know Razer kind of tried with their Project Valerie, but that was just a prototype. I haven't really seen any production computer units have this kind of design again. So I wonder why, because this is a pretty interesting design. What it allows you to do is you can now multitask very efficiently, right? So if you have, like, you can run Windows Explorer, you can run Internet Explorer, you watch YouTube, you can play video, chat with someone on Facebook, any number of applications, use cases you could be programming, and this could be good too. So I really wonder why computers haven't really come up with this design, right? Given the fact that multitasking is such a big thing now, we come with the Surface Duo, the LG Wing, all the dual screen folding designs, right? Why haven't laptop computers come up with a design like this? So I'm wondering why only Onkyo has come up with this. And this model is called the Okio DX from all the way from 2010, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, Onkyo thought about this. And since then, no major PC manufacturer has apparently thought about this design. And it's a touchscreen, right? Your mouse cursor is actually right here. And you have your left and right click up here. You may be wondering why I have that. Well, it's actually also a convertible. So I can actually convert this. It's twist style, it's swivel style. So you can actually swivel it like that, right? So, and you can lie it down, of course, right? But yeah, extremely unique computer, dual screen and convertible. And I also wonder why Onkyo only made a netbook like this. Like, why didn't they try to create a full premium laptop using this design? I don't know. But anyways, this is the Okio DX, very, very unique netbook. All right, and next up we have the Open Pandora. So the Open Pandora is a Linux, small pocket Linux computer, and this was actually sort of a crowd-funded computer. I don't think it was using Kickstarter though. This was like maybe before Kickstarter. But yes, it was crowd-funded, and it was mostly meant for playing emulation games and stuff like that. That's why it has analog controls here, a D-pad, but it also ran full-blown Linux. So you can actually customize it with different Linux distros. I think it ran Debian or like a variation of Debian. But anyways, just a pretty cool device for the time, right? You gotta remember, at the time there wasn't that many like retro emulation devices like there are now. So there were just a few like kind of homebrew devices, and this is kind of one of them that kind of not really mass production, but shipped out to a bunch of people, and it's also extremely rare. So it's kind of hard to find one in the wild. I had to go out to the Open Pandora forums and get one from someone who was selling them. So it's kind of hard to find one. But this is from 2012, I believe. This is the 1 gigahertz model, and I'm gonna say that the keyboard and everything is not great. It's like very mushy keyboard. Analog sticks are very shallow. D-pad and face buttons, like, and then there's trigger buttons too. Like, you can tell that this was a homebrew device. And I mean, compared to modern day retro, emulators, this probably won't stand up very well, but you gotta remember this is from 2012, at a time when there wasn't that many retro emulation devices. And this ran full on Linux on top of that, so you can customize it. Had 2 SD card slots, just for, I think one was loading the operating system. And yeah, still have this in my collection. It's a pretty rare computer actually. And I backed the Dragon Box Pyra. The Dragon Box Pyra was supposed to be the successor to the Open Pandora, but still waiting for it 4 years later. So I'm not sure when the Dragon Box Pyra is going to come out, but still have the Open Pandora in my collection. So that's that one. And then next we have, this is my Lenovo X240 from 2013, and I have this Daedalus skin over it. This is my main computer when I was in San Francisco in 2014, also in Korea in 2015. So I have this computer, well, just because it's not worth a lot anymore, so there's no point to really get rid of it. I will say that this is one of the most expensive computers I purchased, because I bought this at full price without any kind of savings or anything, and it had mobile broadband, which is important to me at the time because smartphones didn't have good mobile hotspot functionality at the time. So this was 2013, right? So yes, I had mobile broadband, which means I had a SIM card slot, and you know, I never had a ThinkPad at the time, so I really wanted to get a ThinkPad, and this does have the modern kind of ThinkPad keyboard. So obviously I do still prefer the old school keyboard, but this modern one is still better than most laptops today. So still a pretty good keyboard. Most people don't like this trackpad, right? This trackpad was so problematic that Lenovo switched over to having the buttons, the trackpad buttons back on the keyboard, the very next generation. But this was the only generation that didn't have the track point buttons, and a lot of people actually swapped out the trackpad to get those buttons. And I kind of understand it, right? If you're using the track point, which a lot of ThinkPad users do, you want to have dedicated buttons, right? Not this stupid everything's on one trackpad thing, right? This would be pretty bad. But anyways, this is what I had at the time, because this is what they were selling at the time. So this is what I got. And it's my first ThinkPad, so I didn't really understand the whole track point nub deal thing. But anyways, I get it now. This is still a pretty decent computer though. I want to say it's a terrible computer, not just because of the trackpad or anything like that. Everything else seems to be fairly okay about this computer. It had pretty good battery life when it came out because it has a power bridge, which Lenovo actually doesn't have anymore on its ThinkPad models. I'm not sure why. I think maybe they wanted to make it slimmer, which is a terrible trade-off because business laptops isn't supposed to be about aesthetics, right? I'd rather they keep the power bridge in. But yeah, this model had the power bridge, which means I could swap out the batteries. This model actually got up to 20 hours of battery. I believe when I first bought it, I bought the extended battery and I got like 20 hours on it, which is crazy. It still is crazy at the time, right? It's crazy at the time and still crazy now to get 20 hours from a laptop. But yeah, fantastic battery life, and I believe this was also the last model to have a VGA port. So if a VGA port is important to you, this was the very last model to have it. So anyways, the X240 from 2013. Alright, now we jump to 2016 and we come to this odd computer with no branding on the lid. This is the Jim PortaBook, and what a unique computer it is because of the keyboard, which is very similar to the IBM, not similar, but reminiscent of the IBM Butterfly keyboard, and it's not automatic, you gotta push it in. So the Butterfly keyboard was still the best design because it's like automatically, you know, expanded like that. But this one, you gotta still manually kind of push it into place. But still, very unique design that I haven't seen other laptop makers make. And this can be considered like a netbook, I guess, because it's running an Intel Atom processor. So I would consider this like a netbook, and it only has 2 gigs of RAM. So this is not meant to be a full-fledged laptop or a full-fledged replacement for your main computer or anything, but it's kind of a novelty. Also, it's only from Japan, right? So it's kind of rare just in that sense. So that's why I have it as part of my collection. Very interesting keyboard. The reminiscent of the Butterfly design. Again, no other laptop makers have tried that. And you got this track point nub right here. The buttons aren't very good. The keyboard looks like an Apple Magic keyboard, and it's not as good as the Apple Magic Keyboard. The keys are definitely more shallow, they're not as clicky. But anyways, still a pretty cool design. Not very powerful, but I have it in my collection just because it's a pretty unique computer. All right, next up we have the Apple MacBook Pro. This is the Apple MacBook Pro 13, so it's a 13-incher. This is from 2016, so it's the first time that Apple used their much maligned butterfly keyboard, which sucks. I'm not gonna say anything. I will say one good thing about it. It makes it very accurate to type, right? Makes typing very accurate. That's about it. Otherwise, the keyboard's very shallow, right? Very hard to hit it, and then over time, people realize it's not very reliable either. The keys often break very easily, and they're very expensive to replace, which is why Apple moved away from this keyboard finally this year. Thank God. This abnormally large trackpad is here. But other things I do like about this computer, I like the speakers. Speakers are very nice on this computer. Display is very nice. And it's a MacBook. What can I say? Those of you who like Mac OS, it's a MacBook. So that in itself is a plus, just having Mac OS. But I'm thinking about getting rid of this computer because the keyboard, lo and behold, has started to act up. So doesn't work very well anymore. Some key presses are not registering very well. So I'm thinking about getting rid of this computer and getting the new MacBook Air, which has the new Magic Keyboard. And by the way, this one doesn't have the touch bar. This has the physical function keys and the escape keys. Thank God. I hate the touch bar too. That's another decision I don't like Apple doing. So that's why I'm hesitant on getting the new MacBook Pro models, because they all have the stupid touch bar. So that's why I'm thinking about the MacBook Air, the new MacBook Air, because it doesn't have the touch bar and has the Magic Keyboard with the scissor switches. So that's why I'm thinking about getting that and getting rid of this one. So anyways, this is the MacBook Pro 2016, the first generation that they put the butterfly keyboard on. Alright, I'm gonna have to tilt down the displays for some of these laptops, so you guys can see. Alright, next up I have the iPad Pro 10.5 from 2017. So we're moving on to 2017 now. Everything up to 2016 I already covered. Alright, so the iPad Pro with the bridge keyboard. So I attached the bridge keyboard to it, which makes it look like a mini MacBook, kind of. So it's kind of cool. And you might be wondering why am I having the iPad Pro in this collection? Well, Apple themselves, and a lot of Apple fans like to say that the iPad Pro is a, quote unquote, computer, right? Kind of a laptop replacement device. And it's big enough to be one. It's definitely bigger than a lot of the devices we've seen already. So anyways, I put it in here because I definitely can be, depends on what your use case is. So what I use the iPad Pro for, I think it can be a computer, like laptop replacement, if you're using it mostly for media consumption and social media, web browsing, stuff like that, watching YouTube. Definitely can replace your laptop for that. If you're doing programming work, gaming, heavy productivity stuff, maybe not. Like if you're doing video editing, it does have iMovie and stuff. It does have a simpler version of Photoshop, but it's not not full, right? If you want to do really heavy duty work, you can't use the iPad Pro for that. But if you're just doing light stuff like media consumption and stuff like that, then it's definitely what I would consider a computer. And we've seen a lot of netbooks already, right? Seen a lot of netbooks. I wouldn't say any of them can be really used for productivity work, right? They can only be used for light work and light media watching and web browsing and stuff like that, and social media stuff. So that's pretty much exactly what the iPad Pro can do, right? And on top of that, it has pretty good speakers, good display, and if you add the bridge keyboard or the new Apple Magic Keyboard, right, it can actually be a pretty decent laptop replacement for like 90% of the stuff you do. So that's why I have it here. Anyways, iPad Pro 10.5 from 2017. I still use it sometimes if I'm doing, just regular stuff. 90% of my daily computer stuff, browsing around, watching videos, then this is still pretty useful. And it's pretty light because of the size, right? Size and weight, still pretty lightweight. So can be like a nice netbook alternative, I guess. Right, next up, 2017, we have the Porsche design Book 1. And this is also a pretty rare computer. Not many people know that Porsche design actually makes computers, but they do. And this is their Book 1. And what's unique about this one is that it's not only convertible, but it's also detachable as well. So there is a button here on the side to detach this display. I'm not going to do this with one hand, but trust me, you guys can actually detach it Surface Book style, right? So that you can actually detach the display Surface Book style, and you can also flip it around. So it's also a 360-degree convertible like this, right? You can flip it around like this. Keyboard is actually pretty good. I would say it's about on par with the Surface Book's keyboard, which is to say it's a pretty decent keyboard. It's pretty nice. Not the ThinkPad keyboard, but it's definitely not the worst keyboard. You can definitely live with it. Decent amount of key travel, not too mushy. So everything else, pretty nice. I actually used this as my main portable computer throughout most of late last year and early this year. So this was actually my main laptop for a good few months. I'm just gonna maybe leave it here in tent mode. Alright, so there it is. The Porsche Design Book 1, convertible and detachable. So far, pretty much the only laptop that can do that still, right? Which is pretty impressive, right? There's been a lot of laptops made since 2017, and still to this day, the only one which is both hard detachable and convertible like this. The Surface Book 3 doesn't do that, right? Still keeps the same design. Was hoping that Microsoft would go that way, but they didn't. So I'm not sure why, actually. Porsche Design is not even a PC maker, right? So it's kind of interesting that they thought of an idea that no one else did. Alright, moving on, still 2017, we have the ThinkPad TP25. This is the ThinkPad 25th Anniversary Edition, which is a limited edition model, so I would assume it could be pretty rare. So the Porsche design is pretty rare, just on the basis of it being a Porsche design computer, but the ThinkPad, this one is rare because it was a limited edition run. So it only came out in 2017. They only sold it for like a specific period of time, and when it came out, a lot of people didn't like it because it wasn't retro enough. No Think Light, no 4:3 display. The keyboard is a 7-row keyboard, and that's really the major special thing about it, right? Basically, all the specs and everything, display and everything else, is pretty much the same as a T440, but major difference is that they put this retro 7-row keyboard on it, which is a really nice keyboard. I have to say that this is still one of the nicest keyboards I've ever used on a modern laptop, and that's a major reason I still keep it, right? I keep it because it has a lot of ports, has like 8 ports, which is a lot for a modern device, has a touchscreen, and it has a track point, and it has a touchpad, so three kinds of input, very versatile. Also has dedicated graphics, has a 940 MX. It's not like a really good GPU or anything. It's not even mid-range, but at least it has a GPU, right? And I think some people were complaining that the GPU wasn't good enough, and I was like, it's a business laptop. Do you expect it to have like a powerful graphics card or something like that? The fact that it has an NVIDIA graphics card at all is actually pretty interesting, right? To me, right? This is a business laptop. I don't really expect to have a powerful NVIDIA graphics card on it, but the fact that it has NVIDIA graphics is something, right? But yeah, the keyboard. Love this keyboard. 7-row keyboard is the first time the 7-row keyboard is a backlit one too. So very unique in that aspect, and also because it's a limited edition. So it has the special ThinkPad logo with the red, green, and blue on it, RGB logo right there. So keeping this in my collection since it's a limited model, and there are some aspects of it about it that I love. Like if I'm getting business work done, typing stuff up, then I'm still going to use this computer. Alright, moving on. The next UMPC device we have is a GPD Win 2 from 2018. What can I say about this device? It's very small, and it's probably the smallest device that you can use to actually play some decent games on. I like the controls. It's about the same as that on the XD Plus, for those of you who have the GPD XD Plus. And it's not the best controls, but it's not the worst either, right? So it's okay. Wish the analog stick would be a little bit better, but the face buttons are okay, and the D-pad is okay. It's not the best, and the keyboard is definitely an improvement over the one on the Win 1. So, I mean, as far as the form factor goes, this is a 6-inch display. This is probably the best you can do for a Windows gaming device of this size. So yeah, I still have the Win 2 because it's so portable, it's pocketable. Literally, you have Windows in your pocket, right? That's what a pocket PC is about. Compared to these other devices, right, these can all run Windows. But this one, I would say, is still probably the most powerful, one of the most powerful UMPCs that you can fit in your pocket, around the same dimensions as these other small ones. But this one's actually able to play some decent games on it, so that's pretty impressive. And by decent, I mean like really low resolution, but still, the fact that it's able to do it is still pretty impressive. So yeah, I still have the Win 2 because it's still a very portable, pocketable device, still very powerful for a UMPC, especially of this size, right? Even in 2020. So have it there. All right, next device we have is the OneMix Yoga 3. So OneMix Yoga 3 is a convertible, so it's a yoga style convertible. The keyboard is pretty nice. It's backlit, 6-row keyboard, and it's pretty comfortable as far as the netbook goes, right? So I would consider this more of a netbook, since you're not going to really play games on it. I play mostly visual novels on it just because that suits the form factor a lot, but not really meant for gaming like the Win 2 or Win Max is. But yeah, still pretty decent all-around laptop. I would say I got this one because I used to have the Pocket 1 and Pocket 2, and I just kind of want to have a netbook that was more usable and a little bit more powerful too. Would be good. This isn't like the most powerful netbook on the market or anything. There's more powerful ones like the P2 Max, for example. You can get higher spec ones, but even the new versions of the Yoga 3 are more powerful. But still have this one because it's powerful enough for me as a Core M3 processor. I'm not going to be playing any special games on this or anything. I'm just going to be doing like web browsing, social media stuff, media watching, and playing visual novels. So that's what this is good for. Keyboard's decent, and it's convertible. So that makes it really suitable for playing touchscreen games. So that's why I have that one. Next up, this is, by the way, is from 2019. So we're starting at 2019 now. Next one, also from 2019, is the competitor to the OneMix Yoga 3, which is the GPD P2 Max. And this one really looks like an iPad mini with a keyboard attached, but it runs Windows. So there you go. It does look like a mini MacBook though. But yeah, I have this one also, and it's got a small, tiny touchpad, and the keyboard is, I would say, a bit more comfortable to use than the OneMix Yoga, even though this one doesn't have as many keys, but the layout is a bit more comfortable, I feel. So if you just, I think I did a video on this recently, but between these two, depends what you're doing, right? If you really want to have the convertible form factor and the extra row keys, you choose the OneMix Yoga. If you just want to have the most comfortable netbook to type on and to use, this one is probably the one to get, the P2 Max. So the keyboard doesn't have the most keys, you know, it's missing an extra row keys. It's not backlit or anything. That's unfortunate, but the navigation is really nice because of the touchpad here. This display is bigger. It's on 8.9 inch display, whereas this one's 8.4 inch. And the keyboard is more comfortable because there's more room for each of the individual keys. So if you just want to have a netbook or UMPC to get work done, to get some typing done, and you really want like a small computer like this, this is probably the one to get. It's just a pretty nice netbook of this size to type on, right? Because the keys are so, there's so much room for the keys to lay out, kind of like just like a full-size laptop in a way, except that's a trade-off you get for not getting that extra row keys, right? Is you get a more comfortable set of keys for the existing 5 rows. But yeah, that's what I would say about the P2 Max, that it's a comfortable netbook to use. Alright, so up to the last row of devices, we're still in 2019, and we're going to look at this small tiny computer here. I'm gonna have to there. Alright, this small tiny computer here is the GPD Micro PC, and this computer is kind of an oddity. You can see the layout is kind of unique. It's almost like kind of reminds me a little bit of the Vulcan Flipstart, but of course it's not exactly like the Vulcan Flipstart. But it's got a touchpad up here, and no nub or anything like that, and it's got the left and right click right here. The keyboard is also kind of unique because they have to fit this keyboard onto a device this small, right? So the number keys have been kind of divided like this. But yeah, it's an interesting computer because it's so small and also has the most ports that I've ever seen on a computer. Even compared to full-size computers, this has more ports, right? It has a serial port, which is not something that you see, this COM port right here, which is not something that you see on pretty much any modern computer. And then it's got full-size HDMI, it's got a full complement, even a full-size Ethernet, a full complement of ports. That's 9 ports for a computer of this size, right? Which is pretty impressive, and that's more than, you know, even some gaming PCs don't have that many ports. So that's pretty impressive. That's, I guess, the reason why I keep this in my collection. It's just, it's so small and it's so unique because it can connect to so many things. Like, you wouldn't imagine such a small computer to be so, to have so many connections. But it's just proof, right? You know, Apple keeps saying, oh, we can't put ports on our MacBook. It's too thin. Well, this is proof you can make a computer this portable and still have this many connectors, right? And this is so much smaller than a MacBook. So if GPD can fit all these connectors, you know, into a computer like this, then there's no excuse for a bigger computer not to have, you know, ports or anything like that. So anyways, Micro PC is still pretty cool. I don't use it all that much, but definitely there could be some use cases for it, right? Alright, next one, we have the HP Dragonfly Elite, and this computer is one that I'm using day to day. This is kind of my main computer. So what's special about it? It is very light, so it's only 2.3 pounds, so 2.4 pounds, yeah. Anyways, very light. The keyboard's very good. This is, again, one of the best keyboards I've used on a laptop of this size. No, it's not as good as the one on the TP25, but this one is smaller than the TP25 and it's much lighter too. So you got to take that into consideration. This keyboard is very nice for a laptop of this size and weight. And I'm going to say good build quality because it's a Netbook, so they put it through all the same tests that a ThinkPad has. So yeah, I like the keyboard on this computer, and I like the fact that it's so lightweight and it's relatively slim and portable for a 13-inch, right? Even by today's standards, it's very slim and portable, and also convertible, of course. So I can flip it over like this, and it's convertible. So it's generally just a computer I like to have, that I use pretty much every day now. So I know I didn't talk about it in my what's in my tech bag video for this year because I didn't have this computer yet at that time. But this has now become the main computer that I use, the main laptop that I use for portable purposes, right? So it's just the one I use daily when I'm, you know, on my bed or something like that, or if I go traveling. This is also the computer that I bring. So yeah, it's just a nice, well-rounded computer, great keyboard, touchscreen, convertible, decent speakers, and a decent amount of ports too. Actually has a full-size USB-A port, which is actually kind of hard to find on computers these days because, you know, everyone's going USB-C, and a full-size HDMI port too, which is useful because, you know, sometimes I do want to connect to a TV or something like that, and that makes it easy without using dongles. Plus it's a business laptop, so you get that guarantee of reliability and extra warranty as well. So yeah, just a good all-around computer to have. Alright, next up we have the Alienware M15. This is the second revision, and this is my main gaming laptop, and I have this one for gaming, right? I have my CyberPower PC desktop for gaming, but I have this one for gaming as well. This one mostly for multiplayer games, right? Because I use the CyberPower PC on my lap for connected to my TV. Those are for single player games. Then when I'm at my desk, when I have access to the microphone and stuff and webcam, then I use this computer for multiplayer gaming. So yeah, it's an Alienware M15. What can I say? Looks really cool, right? It's got the RGB lights, got the UFO design, or the legend design, I should say. Yeah, the legend design is what they call it. It's mostly for gaming because it's a gaming laptop. So it's got RTX 2060 in it. That makes it the most powerful laptop out of the ones in my collection. And you might not see my Asus. I used to have an Asus G751, the 17-incher. I don't have that anymore. And I got rid of my old Alienware 15R3 as well. So this one has kind of replaced both of those computers as my main gaming laptop. So what can I say? I gotta have a laptop for gaming, right? So not much else to say. That's the Alienware M15 R2. Alright, next up is a phone, which I actually promised in my phone video to do in this video, because it's not just a phone, it is a full-blown Linux computer. This is the Planet Computers Cosmo Communicator, and you might see it's very similar to the Scion in many ways, right? So this is a Scion keyboard right here, which I said at the beginning of this video was one of the best keyboards of a device of this type, and you can see just how similar that is, right? Pretty much the same keyboard, except the Cosmo Communicator, obviously much more newer, right? This came out 2020, 1999. It's been 21 years, wow. But yeah, the designer of the Scion keyboard, it's not a coincidence. The designer of the Scion keyboard actually designed this keyboard as well for the Cosmo Communicator for Planet Computers. And the first one they came out with was the Gemini PDA, which I've done a review on my channel already. This is the successor to Gemini PDA, the Cosmo Communicator, which is very similar. I see the major difference is that they added a keyboard backlight and they added this external display. So this external display, you can have like notifications, kind of like smartwatch stuff on it. So all your notifications, and you can do some decent amount of things on it, like call a person or something like that. A light version of all the apps, basically. And you can actually press, this is a button right here, so it's clickable. So if you want to, yeah, this is how you basically navigate through the top of the display. It's a small secondary display, but you can still navigate through it. But yeah, that's an improvement, and also camera, which the Gemini PDA didn't have. So those are actually pretty big improvements. So anyways, that's a Cosmo Communicator. I have it in this video because it actually runs Linux and therefore makes it a full-blown computer, right? Not just a phone running a smartphone operating system. Yes, it runs Android, but you can also dual boot it into Linux Debian and even triple boot it in the future into Sailfish OS as well. So just like the Gemini PDA, which I actually triple booted it into Sailfish OS. But yes, because it can run full-blown Linux, I have it in this video, and because of its similarity to the Scion, right? That's why I have to put it in this video. It's kind of a new age handheld PC. It's basically what this is. I don't even think of this as a phone. You can use it as a phone, right? You can definitely use it as a phone and a camera, but it's actually an evolution of the handheld PC, I think. And this keyboard, right, it's just, yeah, definitely one of the best keyboards I've ever used on a phone. Probably, like, I know I like the BlackBerry Key 2 keyboard as well, but this keyboard, like for, yeah, just for doing productivity work and stuff like that, is probably better because, you know, the keys are bigger and stuff, and you have a landscape mode instead of the portrait mode on the BlackBerry. So I think this keyboard is better than BlackBerry. Yeah, if you just want to type out something long on it, like if you want to write a review, type out a blog post, write something long, I think you would prefer to use this keyboard. So yeah, that's a Planet Computers Cosmo Communicator, the evolutionary successor to the Scion. I don't have the FX Tech Pro 1 yet. That one still hasn't come in, so that's why you don't see that one here yet. Next one I have up is the gaming UMPCs. So by the way, this one, the Alienware is probably like 2019, 2020-ish. All these last two computers are all from this year, 2020. Okay. So next up we have the GPD Win Max. This one I just did a review on, and what can I say? In that review I said that this is the best gaming UMPC and probably the most powerful UMPC that you can currently get on the market right now. And I stick by those words. If you want to play like a decent AAA title, not necessarily on the highest quality or highest settings, but if you just want to be able to play it, on a small device like this that's semi-portable, like you can't put it in your pocket, but you can definitely put it in your backpack pretty easily, right? Definitely easier than the Alienware, right? I mean, the Alienware can definitely play more full-fledged games at high settings, but this one, if you just want to play some recent titles, but not at full settings, probably dial down, but you still want to be able to play them, then this is probably the way to go, right? This is the smallest possible computer you can play those games on. So yeah, and it has, you know, the analog devices, analog stick, all the gaming controller inputs right here, right? And I have to say that they improved on the Win 2. So when I set on the Win 2, I don't like the analog stick on there. This one's definitely better than the one on the Win 2. And they also improved the D-pad and the face buttons as well. Plus, the keyboard is usable. It's not the best keyboard, especially for these number keys. I didn't like the fact that the number keys were so small, and it's a little bit easier to press the F function buttons that are adjacent to it. But other than that, this keyboard is okay. It's definitely usable. I wouldn't say it's as good as P2 Max for typing. You probably want to stick to the P2 Max if you just want a UMPC or a netbook that you want to type stuff on. But if you want to do gaming and you also occasionally type stuff, of course, then this one is probably the way to go, right? The GPD Win Max, which just came out like a month ago or a few weeks ago. So this is probably the newest one in this collection right here. So yeah, the GPD Win Max, this is the one I recommend for people who just want the most powerful netbook slash UMPC on the market right now, the one that they want to, like if they want to play the latest modern titles at maybe not the best settings, but they want them playable, right, at a device of this size. So this is the one I recommend, the GPD Win Max. And up next is the competitor to GPD Win Max is the One Netbook One GX. And this is also a pretty unique design as well. It's got detachable controllers like the Nintendo Switch. Also, the design of it is similar to like a mini Alienware. You can see that it's similar to the Alienware M15, the Legend design, because they put the LED ring on the back, and also the keyboard is kind of inspired by it as well. But I know I said this was a competitor to GPD Win Max, right? But it's not really as performant, right? And so I did a video on the two, and this one, because it's not running the Iris Pro graphics like the Win Max is, you're not going to get as high frame rates on most of the games. So this one can pretty much play the games that the Win 2 can play, right? So it's kind of embarrassing. This one is supposed to be competitive with the Win Max, but it's actually not. I mean, you can play like some decent games, you just can't really play the AAA budget modern games on it, right? You can still play like indie games, emulators, of course, older games like mid 2000s, you can definitely play on this thing. But if you're paying like almost $1,000, I think that you'd probably want to get a Win Max because it's going to be more performant for the same value, right? Also, the One GX's controllers feel really cheap. Like the face buttons, the analog sticks are just okay, but the face buttons and the trigger buttons and the D-pad especially, like it just feels like really cheap quality. Like One Netbook just rushed this out to compete with the GPD, and they didn't really quality control or test it. I don't think they're even as good as the ones on the Win 2, you know, and this is like twice the price of the Win 2. So yeah, I mean, it just definitely cannot compete with the Win Max. I'm really disappointed with this one because it's definitely below my expectations for a computer at this price point. I do admit that the design looks cool. It's kind of like the Alienware UFO concept, which unfortunately Dell has not come out with yet. If they do, I'll definitely get that one. And the Smok Z, by the way, I haven't talked about the Smok Z because that one is basically vaporware until they actually release it. I backed that one like 4.5 years ago. They still haven't come out with it. Anyways, this kind of reminds me of the Razer Edge Pro in a way, but it's actually not even as good as that because the Razer Edge Pro came out in 2013, but it can play like BioShock Infinite, right? It can play those kind of games. This one can't even play BioShock Infinite, so that's kind of sad. This one came out in 2020, this year, 7 years later than the Razer Edge Pro, and it still can't beat the Razer Edge Pro. That's really sad. And at least it came out though, right? That's something more than I can say for the Smok Z. So at least it came out. But yeah. Anyways, the One Netbook One GX, which is a pretty interesting concept, pretty interesting design. The keyboard is actually pretty nice. It's got a decent keyboard. for the size at least, right? And I don't like this track point nub that one netbook always puts on their computers. I prefer a trackpad, but at least the keyboard is decent. The Win Max is definitely the one I would recommend to most people because these are pretty much the same price, right? I would recommend the Win Max to most people because it's more performant. Even though the design of the one netbook, one GX, I have to give props because it looks more unique. But if you know, for most people, you want to be able to play those AAA budget games, right? And the one GX just cannot do that. So that's why I recommend the Win Max for those of you who want just the most powerful, the one that you can use for actual, you know, gaming, right? Anyways, guys, that's it. That is my UMPC / laptop collection all in one video. I did 2 separate videos last time for the laptops and UMPCs. This time I kind of combined it into one because now the kind of lines are blurring, right, between a laptop and a UMPC. So that's why I put it all in one video. So yeah, that's it. So upcoming would probably be the Surface Duo. I might get that. The MacBook Air 2020 is probably one that I will be getting soon. So those ones would be in a separate video. Obviously I haven't got those yet. So those ones might be upcoming. Also any of the upcoming one netbook devices I might think about getting too. Like the new small industrial size netbook, the A1 supposedly is what it's called. Alright, so let's do row by row. I'm going to start with the first row. Alright. Okay, second row. Okay, third row. Okay, and then fourth row. Well, yeah, I'll just keep it like that. Alright, and last row. Alright, and that is it. My computer collection. Yep, that's how many devices are here? Can't really count, I'll probably do it later. But yes, this is a lot of devices. Alright guys, that's it. That's my UMPC / laptop collection. And again, if you have any questions or feedback about any of these computers, then let me know. Once again, for those of you who are watching my previous videos, some laptops and UMPCs are missing from this collection. Yeah, there is no Scion Netbook Pro, there is no NEC Mobile Pro 900, Razer Edge Pro, WikiPad, Asus G751, my old Alienware 15 R3, those are all missing. The HTC Shift X9500, all the Philips, those ones are gone. Asus R2H, just because I either found computers that I thought were better, but similar to those ones, but better, so I got rid of those ones, or just didn't have enough room for them. And like replacements, right, like this Jornada, for example, I found as a replacement for the NEC. So anyways guys, that's it. My whole entire collection now you guys have seen all my phones, all my small mobile devices, PDAs, PMPs, handheld computers, and now you guys have seen the rest of my collection as well. All my laptops, UMPCs, netbooks, and tablets. So that's it, guys. As always, thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any comments in the comment section below.